Gettysburg emerged from director Ronald Maxwell's 15-year journey to bring Michael Shara's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Killer Angels, to the screen. Maxwell acquired rights in 1981 and collaborated with Shara until the author's death in 1988. Maxwell then completed the adaptation independently. The project found financial backing from Ted Turner, whose personal interest in Civil War history provided the necessary support for this ambitious endeavor. Initially planned as a television miniseries for TNT, Turner recognized the production's scope warranted theatrical release. The filming secured unprecedented permission to shoot on the actual Gettysburg National Military Park, allowing for authentic recreation of key battle sequences on the very ground where they occurred. The narrative meticulously chronicles the Battle of Gettysburg from July 1st through July 3rd, 1863, a conflict widely considered the turning point of the American Civil War. Through careful attention to authentic detail, the movie tracks the major strategic decisions and their consequences, focusing on key figures including Union Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, Confederate Generals Robert E. Lee and James Longstreet, and numerous officers from both armies. The central conflict revolves around General Lee's aggressive offensive strategy against Longstreet's preference for defensive positioning, culminating in the devastating Confederate assault known as Pickett's Charge. This strategic disagreement follows documented accounts and drives much of the dramatic tension while educating viewers about actual Army decision-making processes. Maxwell's approach distinguishes itself from typical Hollywood war portrayals through its unwavering commitment to factual accuracy and balanced presentation of both Union and Confederate perspectives. Rather than simplifying the conflict into heroes and villains, the depiction explores wartime, personal, and philosophical motivations of historical individuals. The production employed approximately 5,000 Civil War reenactors who brought their own period-accurate uniforms, equipment, and expertise, creating combat sequences of unprecedented authenticity in scale and detail. These volunteer participants traveled from across the country at their own expense, collectively contributing an estimated $5 million in authentic props, costumes, and historical knowledge. This collaboration with the reenactor community established a new standard for past war portrayals and influenced numerous subsequent historical productions. At first glance, Gettysburg might appear to fit the entertainment-driven classification due to several surface aspects. The production features dramatic fighting sequences with thousands of participants, explosions, and combat action. This creates a visual spectacle reminiscent of conventional war movies. The musical score by Randy Edelman employs stirring themes and emotional motifs that became so popular they were later adopted for NBC's Olympics coverage and various patriotic events. Famous actors portray historical figures, with Martin Sheen, Jeff Daniels, and Tom Berenger bringing star recognition to their roles. The narrative includes emotional moments of friendship, courage, and sacrifice that create conventional dramatic appeal. The marketing emphasized these entertainment qualities, with promotional materials highlighting battle sequences and dramatic confrontations. The presence of these entertainment components might suggest a movie primarily focused on creating engaging drama, set against a historical backdrop. The interpersonal stories, including the friendship between Generals Armistead and Hancock, now fighting on opposite sides, provide human interest typical of mainstream historical dramas. The portrayal contains rousing speeches and moments of battlefield heroism that create inspirational content aligned with entertainment conventions. The extensive combat sequences with their scale and spectacle align with audience expectations for war films as an entertainment genre. The production received a PG rating rather than a documentary classification, positioning it in the commercial feature category. These surface characteristics could initially suggest a work where authentic elements provide context for dramatic storytelling rather than serving a primarily educational function. The foundation-based classification becomes evident through deeper analysis. Military strategy and institutional features form the movie's fundamental structure. Unlike entertainment-driven historical portrayals that use history merely as a backdrop, Gettysburg showcases actual military protocols, command structures, and strategic decisions. The narrative consistently prioritizes educational clarity over dramatic momentum, frequently pausing action to explain battlefield geography, tactical options, and command considerations. These explanatory passages serve a teaching function rather than dramatic development, demonstrating the primary purpose as historical documentation and education. The presentation dedicates substantial screen time to military councils and tactical discussions that would typically be minimized in entertainment-focused productions. The approach to character development further confirms this classification, as historical individuals are presented primarily through their military functions rather than personal dramas. Colonel Chamberlain's background as a professor receives attention primarily to explain his tactical innovation and leadership approach, rather than creating personal stakes. General Lee's relationship with his subordinates focuses on command philosophy and operational decision-making, rather than emotional dynamics. Even personal stories like Armistead and Hancock's friendship serve primarily to illustrate the war's impact on military professional relationships, rather than creating standalone human drama. These figures develop through their response to combat challenges within institutional frameworks, rather than through conventional character arcs. The movie notably lacks romantic subplots, family drama, or fictional characters typically used in entertainment-driven historical films. The production's methodical approach to factual accuracy further demonstrates its foundation-based nature. Military details, including unit positions, command structures, and maneuver tactics, align precisely with historical documentation, often at the expense of narrative momentum or dramatic simplification. The movie allocates substantial screen time to tactical discussions, battlefield geography orientation, and command deliberations that serve educational purposes rather than dramatic needs. The dialogue frequently includes detailed military terminology and operational concepts explained through character interactions, functioning as educational content within the narrative framework. Uniform details, weapons operation, and army procedures receive meticulous attention, with historical consultants making hundreds of script corrections to ensure accuracy. Even the extended 4-hour running time reflects prioritization of comprehensive historical coverage over entertainment pacing, allowing full exploration of strategic developments and command decisions across the 3-day engagement. The resolution particularly distinguishes it from entertainment-driven classifications. Rather than creating artificial dramatic closure or personal redemption arcs, the conclusion focuses on the historical outcomes and strategic significance of the battle. Lee's acceptance of responsibility for the failed assault and Longstreet's vindication in his tactical assessment receive attention because they are historically significant, not because they provide satisfying character resolution. The film concludes with text explaining the battle's historical consequences and noting the later fates of key historical figures, reinforcing its primary function as historical education. This consistent subordination of entertainment conventions to historical documentation and military education firmly establishes Gettysburg as a foundation-based work. Ronald F. Maxwell's creative vision for Gettysburg centered on historical preservation rather than commercial entertainment. This dedication manifests in numerous production choices, including the decision to maintain a lengthy 4-hour running time to accommodate the complex operational developments and command decisions of the 3-day engagement. Maxwell insisted on filming at the actual battlefield locations whenever possible, capturing the authentic terrain that shaped combat decisions. This approach required special permission from the National Park Service and created logistical challenges, but resulted in a visual record of how geographical features like Little Round Top, Seminary Ridge, and the Union Line's famous fishhook formation directly influenced the combat outcome. The creative personnel brought specialized past knowledge to the production. Army technical advisors included prominent Civil War historians and retired officers who ensured accuracy in everything from command protocols to troop formations. Historical consultant Brian Pohanka made nearly 400 script corrections during production, almost all of which Maxwell incorporated. Costume designer Richard Lamotte researched period-specific uniforms down to regimental insignia, button designs, and fabric types. The sound department developed techniques to recreate the distinctive acoustics of Civil War artillery, including the delay between visual cannon fire and the arrival of sound at different distances. This attention to sensory authenticity helps viewers understand how battlefield communication functioned in an era before electronic communications. Cinematographer Kees van Oostrom employed wide-angle panoramic shots to capture the geographical scope of the battleground, allowing viewers to understand the strategic significance of terrain features. These establishing shots provide educational context before cutting to ground-level action, maintaining viewer orientation throughout complex fighting sequences. The movie frequently incorporates maps and topographical indicators that explain troop positions and movements, functioning as visual teaching tools within the narrative. This approach sacrifices some immediate dramatic impact for educational clarity, demonstrating the production's commitment to factual documentation over entertainment conventions. The involvement of thousands of experienced Civil War reenactors enabled accurate portrayal of period drill, marching formations, artillery procedures, and field communications. These sequences demonstrate how armed forces protocols functioned in practice, showing how orders are transmitted through chain of command, how artillery batteries coordinated fire, and how infantry units executed complex maneuvers under fire. The recreation of Pickett's charge stands as a landmark in authentic filmmaking, with over 5,000 participants recreating the Confederate assault across nearly a mile of open ground, demonstrating the operational realities that led to its failure. This sequence required 3 days of shooting with hundreds of cameras to capture the scale and tragedy of the actual event, sacrificing production efficiency for documented accuracy. Gettysburg structures its narrative around the chronological progression of the 3-day conflict, with each day forming a distinct act with its own strategic focus and character developments. This past timeline serves as the organizing principle rather than conventional dramatic structure, allowing viewers to understand how events unfolded in their actual sequence. Day 1 establishes Union cavalry commander John Buford's crucial early defensive action that secured advantageous terrain. The movie dedicates substantial screen time to Buford's tactical thinking and deployment decisions, showing how his foresight in recognizing the battlefield's strategic value shaped the entire encounter's outcome. This sequence demonstrates how individual initiative within Army structures influenced past events, providing insight into both personality and institutional frameworks. Character development emerges naturally from historical individuals' responses to combat challenges rather than fictional dramatic arcs. Colonel Chamberlain's growth from college professor to effective combat commander unfolds through his application of intellectual problem-solving to battlefield situations. The portrayal presents Chamberlain's leadership development through a series of escalating challenges, from managing mutinous soldiers to addressing ammunition shortages, to making the critical decision to order a bayonet charge. Each decision builds upon previous characterization, showing his evolution within documented constraints, rather than imposing artificial transformation. This approach allows viewers to understand how actual people behaved in crisis situations, based on documented accounts. The narrative carefully balances military exposition with personal relationships to illuminate command dynamics. The contrasting leadership styles of Lee and Longstreet receive particular attention, with their philosophical disagreement about offensive versus defensive strategy serving as a central tension. Their discussions reveal Lee's traditional emphasis on aggressive action and warrior spirit against Longstreet's more modern understanding of defensive firepower advantages. The portrayal presents General Richard Ewell's failure to take Cemetery Hill on the first day as a consequence of Lee's command style, which gave subordinates discretionary authority rather than direct orders. This personal-driven exploration of command relationships provides insight into how personality and leadership philosophy influence crucial Army decisions without imposing fictional dramatic conflicts. The presentation of General Lewis Armistead and Union General Winfield Scott Hancock's pre-war friendship illuminates the war's personal dimension. The movie establishes their relationship through Armistead's evening conversation with Longstreet, where he entrusts Longstreet with his personal effects should he fall in combat. This poignant request foreshadows Armistead's fate leading his brigade during Pickett's charge, where he reaches the Union line before being mortally wounded. The thread concludes with Armistead dying among Union soldiers, asking about his friend Hancock, who has also been wounded. This narrative element illustrates how institutional conflict severed professional and personal bonds, using documented relationships to humanize the larger national division without introducing fictional romantic subplots or family dramas typical of entertainment-focused war movies. The defense of Little Round Top on the confrontation's second day represents one of the most fully realized story threads. The sequence begins with General Governor Warren's strategic recognition of the hill's importance, noticing the undefended position and urgently requesting troops to secure it. Colonel Chamberlain's 20th Maine Regiment, positioned at the extreme left of the Union line, becomes responsible for holding this crucial terrain against repeated Confederate assaults. The depiction meticulously recreates the operational challenges Chamberlain faced, including his thinning line, dwindling ammunition, and vulnerable flank. When Confederate forces threaten to outflank his position, Chamberlain orders a desperate bayonet charge down the hillside. The portrayal presents this famous decision as thoughtful innovation, rather than reckless bravery, showing Chamberlain calculating his limited options before making this fateful choice. This sequence demonstrates how individual leadership operated within the larger armed forces framework, showing how Chamberlain's maneuver decisions supported the broader Union strategy, while adapting to immediate field conditions. The presentation devotes significant attention to the first day's fighting, particularly Union General John Buford's critical early decisions. Recognizing the advantageous terrain features, Buford deploys his limited cavalry forces in defensive positions to delay the Confederate advance until Union infantry can arrive. The depiction shows Buford's tactical acumen through his analysis of the ground, his understanding of Confederate tendencies, and his careful deployment of resources. These scenes illustrate how individual officer initiative could shape major encounter outcomes while educating viewers about cavalry tactics and the importance of terrain selection. The sequence concludes with Buford's relief at the arrival of Union reinforcements under General John Reynolds, followed by the tragic death of Reynolds shortly after reaching the battleground. This factually accurate event demonstrates the clash's chaos and cost, while showing how command continuity functioned during officer casualties. The portrayal of the Confederate high command meetings reveals how Army decisions emerged from both strategic thinking and personal dynamics. Evening council scenes show Lee consulting with his generals, including Longstreet, A.P. Hill, and Richard Ewell, revealing different perspectives on tactical options. These sequences illustrate the Confederate command structure, showing how Lee solicited input while maintaining final authority. The depiction portrays Longstreet's growing concern about Lee's aggressive tactics, particularly the planned frontal assault on the Union center on the third day. Rather than simplifying this disagreement into a dramatic conflict, the presentation shows it as a professional operational difference between respected colleagues, with both men maintaining martial discipline despite their disagreement. This nuanced portrayal helps viewers understand how military hierarchy functioned, even amid genuine strategic differences, showing the human dynamics within institutional frameworks without resorting to fictional interpersonal drama for entertainment value. Upon its release in 1993, Gettysburg received largely positive critical reception, particularly for its documented accuracy and authentic portrayal of 19th century armed forces operations. Critics frequently noted the exceptional attention to period detail, from uniforms and equipment to field tactics and command procedures. Military historians particularly praised the balanced portrayal of commanders on both sides and its nuanced presentation of tactical debates. Military professionals praised its detailed portrayal of command decision-making. Some mainstream critics, while acknowledging the historical achievements, questioned its lengthy running time and methodical pacing, suggesting it might challenge viewers seeking conventional entertainment. The production received recognition within historical and military circles, earning praise from educational institutions and historical societies. The limited theatrical release following its television debut resulted in modest box office performance, but it found substantial audience through television broadcasts, video rentals, and educational use. The TNT television premiere in June 1994 attracted more than 23 million viewers, setting a cable television record at that time. This success, through alternative distribution channels, demonstrated the appeal beyond conventional theatrical metrics, particularly among history enthusiasts and educational audiences. Gettysburg established a lasting influence on historical filmmaking through its documentary-like approach to warfare history. The portrayal demonstrated that meticulous factual accuracy could be maintained while still creating an engaging narrative, establishing a model for later historical productions. Military and historical education programs frequently utilize the movie as a teaching resource, with specific sequences used to illustrate tactical concepts and leadership principles. The involvement of thousands of historical reenactors strengthened the reenactment community and elevated standards for authenticity in period productions. Civil War battlefield preservation efforts benefited from increased public interest following the release, with organizations reporting increased visitation and support for conservation initiatives. The Gettysburg National Military Park specifically noted increased visitor interest in previously overlooked sites featured in the depiction, such as Little Round Top and the positions of specific regiments. The movie also contributed to scholarly reevaluation of certain historical individuals, particularly Confederate General James Longstreet, traditionally criticized in Lost Cause mythology for the Confederate defeat at Gettysburg. Longstreet's portrayal, following Shara's novel, presented a more sympathetic view of his operational objections to Lee's strategy. This characterization aligned with modern military historians' reassessment of Longstreet's advocacy for defensive tactics as strategically sound, given the realities of the time. This educational impact on public and scholarly understanding of historical figures demonstrates how the presentation functioned as a vehicle for historical education, rather than merely entertainment. The movie continues to serve as a reference point for discussions of historical accuracy in cinema, particularly regarding warfare history, showing how film can function as both narrative and historical document. Gettysburg approaches Civil War military culture with careful attention to period authenticity, presenting armed forces structures and protocols as they functioned in their historical context. The depiction portrays the distinctive organizational cultures of Union and Confederate forces, including differences in discipline approaches, command flexibility, and tactical philosophy. Union forces display greater standardization in uniform and equipment, reflecting Northern industrial capacity, while Confederate units show more variation in dress and armament, accurately representing Southern resource limitations. Military courtesies reporting procedures and order transmission follow documented past practices rather than simplified modern interpretations. Officers interact according to period-appropriate protocols with formal language and prescribed methods of addressing superiors and subordinates. This meticulous recreation of military institutional culture provides viewers with understanding of how 19th century armies functioned as organizational structures beyond their combat functions. The presentation shows power structures and hierarchies with historical accuracy rather than contemporary reinterpretation. Command authority operates through period-appropriate channels, with orders transmitted through proper chain of command and officers relating to one another according to rank protocols. The different leadership philosophies of key commanders receive particular attention, with Lee's tendency to issue discretionary orders contrasted with more direct command styles. The portrayal accurately depicts the significant autonomy field commanders exercised during this period, showing how communication limitations and battlefield conditions required officers to make independent decisions based on general guidance rather than specific instructions. These aspects illuminate the practical functioning of military hierarchy in 19th century warfare without imposing modern organizational expectations or values. The movie shows how institutional structures shaped individual behavior within historical contexts, providing insight into how military systems operated in practice. The philosophical frameworks underlying individual motivations receive nuanced presentation grounded in past context. The production portrays Union and Confederate motivations through period-appropriate perspectives rather than simplified modern political frameworks. Confederate officers express commitment to state sovereignty and constitutional interpretation rather than explicit defense of slavery, reflecting the self-perception of many historical Confederate officers while not disguising the fundamental role of slavery in the conflict. Union motivations similarly reflect period complexity, with preservation of the Union and constitutional authority featured prominently alongside moral opposition to slavery. This approach presents historical figures within their authentic philosophical frameworks, without either glorifying or condemning them through anachronistic moral standards, allowing viewers to understand past motivations in their proper context. The movie portrays how individuals understood their own actions and choices within the cultural frameworks of their time. The presentation shows religious features as authentic qualities of 19th century Army life, rather than objects of either promotion or criticism. Characters reference providence, pray before battle, and express faith-based perspectives in ways consistent with documented historical expressions. General Lee's religious perspective receives particular attention, with his fatalistic trust in divine guidance influencing his tactical aggressiveness. The film presents these religious components as historical factors influencing military decisions rather than topics for theological commentary. This approach maintains factual accuracy while avoiding either religious advocacy or critique, presenting faith as one element within the complex historical reality of Civil War military culture. This balanced treatment allows viewers of various religious perspectives to appreciate the historical role of faith in military culture without feeling either proselytized or criticized. The movie portrays how religious beliefs functioned within Army institutions and influenced command decisions without making judgments about these beliefs. Gettysburg stands as a remarkable achievement in historical documentation through cinematic means. The comprehensive recreation of the Battle of Gettysburg goes beyond typical historical drama to provide viewers with understanding of 19th century military structures, tactical principles, and command functions through meticulous attention to authentic detail, from uniform buttons to command protocols to battlefield geography. The production creates a visual record of how this pivotal confrontation unfolded and why specific decisions produced their historical outcomes. This commitment to factual fidelity and educational function defines the approach throughout its extended running time. The movie's value extends beyond its narrative achievements to its function as a historical preservation tool. By filming on actual battlefield locations with thousands of knowledgeable reenactors and military advisors, Gettysburg captured authentic representations of Army formations, tactical movements, and field conditions that help modern viewers understand the realities of Civil War combat. This preservation function aligns with its foundation-based classification, as the portrayal consistently prioritizes historical documentation and military education over conventional entertainment considerations, while incorporating dramatic elements. The presentation subordinates these to its primary purpose of historical illumination, creating a production that continues to serve as both cinematic achievement and educational resource for understanding this crucial moment in American military history. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. Also check out our previous episodes. We'll see you next time.